Welcome to Intuitive Connections, where spirituality and psychology meet to help you be your best and brightest self. I'm your host, Victoria Shaw, and in each episode, I'll help you to awaken your own inner wisdom, step into your power, and live a more divinely inspired life. You're here to let your inner light shine. Are you ready? Let's do this. So hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today we have an intuitive reading and I'm really excited about it. Our guest has a focus area that I think will align with many of the reasons why all of you want to tune into this show. And I can already tune into her energy. It's just adorable. So Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to see what happens.
Me too. So Stephanie, can you share with me again and the listeners for the first time what you'd like guidance on today?
Yeah, so I've felt a lot of my own spiritual gifts kind of pick up, and I am curious where that is directing, where I should focus, and how that's impacting and why.
Beautifulness. And when you talk about spiritual gifts, what does that mean to you?
So I've learned to do Reiki, but that was a while ago. That was like, to me, Reiki is like the gateway drug to the energy world.
Some people say that.
It's what it felt like to me. It definitely changed me. But now, like, I'm picking up like psychic things, and I channeled somebody for the first time unexpectedly. That was weird. And so like I feel these things coming in, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with them exactly.
Beautifulness. All right. The first question that I want to ask you, that I'm prompted to ask you, is what guided you towards doing Reiki? Like, what started you on this journey?
I was in a high demand religion, so that's where I grew up, and it was very confining, and it did not resonate with me anymore. It was a really hard journey out of that, and then I had to completely redefine myself and pick up the pieces and figure out what fits and what doesn't. And spirituality allowed me to kind of still have a faith, but I didn't have all these guidelines and parameters around it. And so that led me into Reiki and energy work.
Oh, I love that. That's such a cool answer to the question. And it feels to me like you left said high demand religion a while ago. It's not a new thing. When was that for you chronologically, if you don't mind sharing?
It was 2018. And then it took me 3 years of being like atheist or whatever, just not believing anything because I had to read it. I had to reshape God or spirit, you know? So that was
For
3 years.
sure.
And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that it was like safe to invite spirit back in.
Got it. And so Reiki was your first step towards doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And was there a prompting? Was there, somebody said like, oh, you should try this, or did you just feel called in that direction?
So I was in a Facebook group for those leaving this religion. And there was someone in that group who was like, I'm going to try and be psychic. So I was like, God, well, you can practice on me and see where that goes. And at this point, like anything was taboo. So this was like super not okay. But I was like, curiosity won out on that one. And so she did a reading on me, and she's the one who told me to go do Reiki.
Beautifulness. Yeah. And she told you to do Reiki because because like that's just like her formula, which is adorable. But I feel like the reason you were guided to all of these things were for a couple of reasons. One, there's some sort of past life stuff that you're reworking through around other bodies in which you were probably a healer of some sort. There are a lot of bodies in which you've been a healer. You probably even have tuned into that a little bit on your own. So it's very familiar territory for you, but I think one of the things that you wanted to work on in this body on many levels is your relationship to spirit and your relationship to self, and also it's kind of obvious, but I want to get it right from the guides. They say, go ahead, your relationship to organized spirituality. Right. And I think all those things are coming together because, as most of us know, there were many periods of time where the major organizational religions of the time, of the place, Christianity is well known for this, but I'm sure there's other examples as well. These establishments really set out to, on purpose or inadvertently, be replacement for one's own direct connection to their spiritual guidance, right? You have to go through the church. You have to do these things in order to find your spiritual connection. And of course, that to me is the antithesis of how spirituality actually works, right? Because you are a divine being having a human experience. So your connection to your own spiritual wisdom and all of the flavors and beautifulness of your own soul, like that's direct. That's direct. You don't need a middleman. You may choose someone like me, because it's fun and because it amplifies and, reinforces and validates, what you are experiencing internally or points your mind in a different direction. But as I said to you before we went live, and as I say to every client, the way that I see my work and the way I think any spiritual teacher, advisor is always helping you to find the answers within you. Right. And
Mhm.
if I were to say, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and this is the only way to do it, that's very disempowering
And limiting.
and limiting. And I think also, not that I usually use this term, but just wrong. It's the wrong way to go. It's the
Yeah.
wrong way to go because your connection is yours and no established formula should take you away from connecting with your own inner wisdom, your own inner truth, and your own inner guidance, because it should be pointing you back there and giving you a framework to rediscover it, but giving you all the power. So, there's been a long history of institutions taking over that role for people and then getting lost in the egoic ideas of power and disempowering their followers. And, some of these were politically motivated, monetarily motivated. And I think we still obviously see remnants of that today, especially in the more high demand religions and cults and things like that, where that spiritual channel is co-opted by the egoic needs of people that are claiming certain kinds of power. Or even in yours, it just feels very fear-based. It feels like it's not like there's a bunch of people sitting at the top necessarily benefiting, but there just is a very fear-based structure. Does this resonate?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of fear-based. They used family as like the thing that you strive to keep together, but then they use your family to constantly threaten you. If you don't do this, you'll lose your eternal family. And that was some of it. And then everything had to go through, they would have like charts, like graphs, of different layers of who you should listen to. And it would be like God, and then your father, and then like the bishop or something, or the pastor, and then it would be you. So like your own intuition was the bottom of what you were really allowed to listen to.
Right. And so what you really attracted in this lifetime for yourself is a path to release some of those past life and current life conditioning around this and to really own your own power as a healer, as a helper, and as a human. And of course, as a soul in human form. So,
Yeah.
yay. So, you're exactly where you need to be. And I'm sure you recognize this, but I'll reaffirm it. Every experience that you've had up until now in this body has been guiding you subtly and sometimes not so subtly on that path. Right. Because you would not have the understanding that you have now had you not had the experiences that you'd had.
Right. Yeah. And they're still good and there's still value, I think, in those kind of environments. They're just ready to see what else is out there.
I love that. And I think that your first prompting towards the forbidden was exactly that. Like, here I am, I'm out of this cage. And now I want to, it's like if you are Amish, I want to smoke a cigarette or I want to like go to a disco or listen to, you know what I mean? So I think this was in part your equivalent to that. Like, ooh, this is interesting because
Yeah.
I could never do this and now I can, right?
I think the first that taboo thing was coffee.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a big deal.
I believe you. Yeah, I can see that. But the other piece that I think is so important in all of this is that I think you always had a deep calling to do this kind of work. So I think on some level, this door was waiting for you to open it whenever you got to that place that you suddenly realized it was there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And it's starting with Reiki and all the things that you do, it is bringing you back to a lineage of many past lifetimes doing this kind of work, which is why you're here asking me this question, maybe answering it too. I don't know. Because there is this curiosity. And I don't know if this is your experience, but it appears to me, reading you through my mind's eye, that your experiences, it comes pretty naturally to you.
I think it does.
You haven't really had to it's like all of a sudden you were like, oh, I'm going to peek open this door. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I know everything here. Like I've done this, I've seen that. That's familiar. It's like now that you have started to be in that space, a lot of familiar old knowings are coming forth for you very, very quickly.
I hope so.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. But like, because I know when I go to sign up for a class, like I'll hear spirit be like, nah, you don't need that. But then I also want somebody to follow, right? Like I want to learn. And then so I start looking for classes and it's just a pattern that keeps happening over and over.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because that's super interesting. And I think it's something that listeners would gel with. You know what I always do? First of all, I was one of those people that when my intuition opened up, and I never shut it down all the way, but when I made the decision to really open it up and I was taking these classes from this place, the first place I did, and I just felt like it wasn't like an ego thing, like it wasn't in my mind, but I just was like, I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And they kept saying, like, this was their lingo. You keep matching energies with like the most experienced people in the room, like stay in your lane. And I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I just knew, like I knew, like I've done this before. And it opened up very quickly for me.
Yeah.
Although I've had some teachers, I would say I'm mostly self-taught in the intuitive and energy healing realm, mostly because I had so much left brain education. I just didn't feel like I needed anymore. But when I do take a class or I do find a mentor or teacher, it's always because they have a flavor or something, that inspires me, that I'm excited about, and I always think about this, not just for me, but this is for everybody, that everything we encounter in the outside world is a remembering of what we already know inside, at least the really good stuff that really sticks. Right. And whenever we have a teaching, I think it's really important that ideally we make it our own, right? You see what's out there, you see what vibes with you. And just like we said at the beginning of the session before we went live, you try it on for size, you see what resonates, you keep that and you let go of what doesn't. To me, that's the highest form of intuition at work, and that's how it should always be. So when you take these classes, I really invite you to do that, to recognize maybe something about this, that, or the other thing excites me, and I want to learn, and I want to sample it, and I want to try it. But the need to have an authority
Hmm.
who's 100% right or wrong, and I get that sometimes too. It's going to steer you wrong every time because there's nobody outside of you that has your answers for you.
I feel like that really resonates because I'll try to do little things. And I think each person has this beautiful like nugget of wisdom that I can get from it. But then that's kind of what spirit says to me. It's the same thing that you said is that you could take this class, but you're not going to be able to stay in your own lane if you keep taking everybody else's classes. You're not going to find what resonates with you independently if you're constantly looking at these other people. And that's just me. I know some people really need to have that guidance, but it's me. It's very weird that it's always gets shut down really fast.
If you're looking for other people to have the answers and to show you how, yes. If you're looking at other people as an example to share something that they know so that you can remember it, it's a different thing. So I think that what your guides and what you're hearing, but again, vet it for yourself because you have that direct connection, is that they're suggesting that you already know a lot of this. You can teach yourself a lot of it, but most importantly, don't give your power away. When you take a
Mhm.
class and get a certification, and again, this is not for everyone. So many people have certifications. I love certifications. I have many letters after my name. It's all good. But
Yeah.
if you believe at the end of the day that the teacher knows more than you, they know more than you about what they know. But if
Mhm.
you believe they have your answers and you don't feel like I can have the answers until I find the third party person to validate my truth for me, that's when you're going to get stuck. And if you go into the classes with that headspace, then you're going to learn something, but you're not going to learn what you really need to know.
Now I think that really validates the pattern that I've been in. Makes a lot of sense. I love hearing it like in your words.
Cool beans. That's how it goes. So that's what I get. So it's not the taking of classes so much as the energy. Now, I do think that you have the ability to be a little more self-taught. And look, there's different reasons why we have certifications and education. A big one is just for other people. Like I just, synchronicity enough. That's not a word, but it is now. I just was like, someone on Facebook had talked about some listing for holistic practitioners and said, hey, is it good, for practitioners and for finding people? So I checked it out and I saw some people locally I know on it. And I was like, ooh, maybe I'll sign up for this. And one of the questions they ask you is, what's your certifications? Do you have a certification for what you do? Now, I'm lucky because I have letters after my name. So hopefully they'll take that. But if I didn't, then I'd probably want like one or two, like a Reiki certification or a coaching certification, because unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view it, that's what the world wants. The world wants some independent truth that, you didn't just make this up yourself, which by the way, most of what I do, I make up myself.
They want the validation. They want to know before they put money into you that you know what you're going to be doing. So
Right.
I've been thinking about doing certifications too. Just so for that reason.
It's how the world works. So one reason we do some of these things is because it's how the world works. And sometimes it's best to meet people where they're at. Okay.
Yeah.
That said, I have put my faith in energy healers that are completely self-taught, that have no certification, that totally rock it. So it really depends on, you're always going to find the right people. But one reason to do it would be for that reason, just so you have a starting point. So you can get insurance too for things like that. So that's one reason. And then the other reason why we take classes or do things, like I said, is it's like a buffet. And there's so much out in the world, and this interests me and that interests me. And I can go and I can take little nuggets off of each little station and incorporate them into what I love to do. And I have a friend who, she's been on the show before. She's going to be on the show again soon, although she doesn't know it. But I've been meaning to invite her. And she's like this amazing energy healer and teacher. And she is just one of those people that grabs tools from everywhere and weaves them together in beautiful ways. And they're all things she's learned from reading different books and taking different trainings. And then she puts them together in her own beautiful, unique, and intuitive way. And it's magical. So that's some people's way as well. And I don't ever get the sense that she gives her power away to anything, but she does love collecting her shiny little tools and sharing them with people. So, it really depends on your thing. But for you, you have some things that you would like to relearn, reshare. And I think it's very important for you to give yourself back the power by giving yourself some opportunity to make up your own stuff and to make up your own way and to start to listen and start to trust it. So if you need a Reiki certification, which you might already have, that's usually a good one to start because everyone understands that. And under that, you can do anything.
I do have that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably all you need. I would love for you to, I don't know how far along you are, but I would love for you to do practice sessions with people that you feel comfortable with. And it could even be yourself. It could even be in your mind's eye. If you're not ready to deal with people yet, you could say, hey, can I do an energy session on your behalf, like remotely, where I tune in and just intuit what might be helpful for you and do it without them even be there. That might be a little softer for you. And start to see what comes through. Start to see what comes through. Sometimes you edit yourself and you stop yourself and you're like, oh, I don't know what this is. But if you listen to it, if you follow it, like you're going to get feedback because people are going to be like, that's so cool. That's so neat. When I first started doing this, and I do some energy work, but I don't lead with it. It's just my own thing. And when it comes up, like as I talked about when we first tuned in again before we hit record, and I wanted to work on some energy in your heart and solar plexus, right? I have my own like little special way of doing that. And it was given to me. And I started doing it before I even knew what I was doing. Some of it I've learned vicariously from people that I've worked with, and some of it's just my soul's gifts. I just know how to do it. And when I get in the zone, I'm listening to my intuition and I've learned to follow it. And whatever it tells me to do, I do. But years ago, I can think of two examples where I did these very weird things that I'm sure were associated on some way with ancient shamanic rituals. But I just felt, called to do them for a client. I did them. And to this day, I still do not know if these are things that, so maybe someone listening will email me and go, oh yeah, Victoria, that's totally a thing. But I remember years ago doing some kind of reading for someone early on, like within the first year or two. And I had this very strong sense that I should take a vessel that was fire safe and, write something on a piece of paper, burn it in the vessel until it was totally ashes, and then dispose of the ashes. And that this was a powerful clearing. Never actually done that again. Oh, that's not true. I did it for me recently, but I never done it before again for a client, but it was very clear. And it was a particular shaped vessel that I had to find for this particular thing. It was very interesting. And I know that was tapping into a past life knowing, right? No one taught me to do that.
Right.
But I understood what I was doing and, definitely wasn't going to hurt anybody doing it. Right. So, I invite you to feel in and to play with what wants to come through.
Yeah, so that's so I went from doing the Reiki to I've been practicing doing psychic readings for people just to and it's fascinating to get that like instant feedback. So I know that that's where I'm practicing. And then beyond that, like, I don't know, because there's so many different things to
Yeah.
focus on that it's kind of hard to know which one's supposed to be your jam, I guess.
I would invite you to listen and let your jam come to you. I mean, you're listening by talking to me, but let your jam come to you rather than trying to figure it out. Because when we try to figure it out, that's usually the energy of what should I be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And It's the slow way around because should is usually has a lot of what other people think involved in it.
I can see that.
Whereas your inner wisdom and your inner guidance is just yours. So I would notice what happens in the session. I would maybe meditate if you have time after every session and ask your guidance, did I miss anything here? Is there anything else fun? Is there anything else I should do? When the person's off the phone or out of the room and you don't have to interact with them because it's kind of two different things,
Yeah,
make some notes. Is there anything else? Is there anything else I could do next time?
I love that.
Right? I think that will free you up to eventually starting to do some of these things when the person is present. Because it's a little bit harder when they're there because there's sort of a demand characteristic of like not wanting to do something you don't know how to do and then embarrassing yourself or having to explain to the other person, I'm doing this now, but, when you have no idea why you're doing it.
Right.
I'm pretty much over those things, but as a new practitioner, I most definitely, would have been a little bit more cautious.
No, I love that. That's really good advice. The meditating afterward.
Yeah, and ask your guide specifically, is there anything else? And write it down and start having a journal so that you can look back and see on some tools, okay? And you may try it the next time they come in because now you've had a little bit of knowing. Two other things that come through, you're very good with colors. So I don't know if you see colors when you work, but color is really big for you. So I would feel into that. And what they're saying is that you can move energy around with color. So you may visualize colors in your mind if you're very visual. You're telling me that you're not, but I see this, so I don't know which one to believe. That's what I see is that you can start to move around energy by colors. So you may ask yourself a question like at the beginning, what three colors does this client need today? Right. And check in the middle and say, like, where are their colors now, or like at the end. But I do feel like you may be sending colors to people. There may be something around moving and changing their colors. So if that means anything to your face says it does not. But if that comes up, I would feel into that.
No, it makes sense.
Oh, okay. It does make
Yeah.
sense. Good.
Well, okay, I would say that I don't see color, but at the same time, when I think back just over the past 3 months, color has been coming into it. But when I look at a person, I don't see their aura the way that other people talk about seeing auras. But when I close my eyes, then there are colors that come present. So
Yes.
it's new, which is probably why
Mhm.
my face is like, no. But I think that there's a lot of potential there. So it's definitely something I'll look into.
I would keep feeling into that. You may want to draw or doodle before or after a session. And the guides are just saying, notice how their colors change from the beginning to an end of a session. If that's all you do, if you tune in at the beginning and you notice their colors and you write down what you notice, mind's eye is fine. I don't see auras, but I can feel into this stuff.
Yeah.
They're all just different ways of experiencing, and we're all different. Some of us don't like to see stuff with our eyes. I'm one of those people, like, keep it in the mind's eye, please. And then notice at the end what their colors are doing. I think without thinking, you may discover something really cool. The colors might change, they might get more like if you just do it in a very nonchalant way without trying to figure out what it means, over time, it might start to be a little code for you.
Okay. No, I really like that. I'll give it a try.
Yeah. But the trick is what they're trying to get you to do, Stephanie, is they're trying to get you to get out of your head when you receive stuff. So if you don't need to know what it means and you just receive it and you write it down and you
Mhm.
allow yourself to figure it out later,
Yeah,
it can often be more powerful because the biggest limiter to our intuition, and when we're giving a reading, this is very true, is that we try to figure it out too soon.
that's true.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Years ago, I always give this example that, I get images for people, and there's sometimes some of the most powerful things that people get. Like my friend Lisa McCourt is always like, I love the images that you get. Like it's the best thing that you do. But I didn't always get them. And what would happen at first is I would get these visual images, right? And then my brain would come in and I'd be like, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't know where they're going with that. Oh, and I would shut it down.
Mhm,
I try to interpret it too soon. And I learned that if I just let the whole thing come,
mhm.
sometimes I would just get the whole thing, give it to the client, and they would know, and I wouldn't have a clue what I just gave them. But other times, I would get let in on the picture too. But if I would have to let the whole thing come through and then I could understand it. And intuition works that way. And sometimes too, we're given something that the client can receive and we don't need to know. And sometimes too, when we're receiving information, I get this that expands our current level of awareness because I learn through the readings that I do.
Mm,
I don't just always repeat the same thing or like I learn constantly I'm growing and changing. And so a lot of times something will come through in a reading and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. That's a game changer for me too. So the reason that I'm able to do that is because I listen first and interpret after.
I'm the worst at trying to interpret it beforehand because
Yeah.
I still have that like fear of I don't want to tell them the wrong thing. So
Mhm.
I'll try and then I find myself guessing. And then when you guess, you're always wrong. I mean, not always, but like not genuine.
Yeah. When I teach intuition development, everyone thinks it's guessing. And sometimes I'll play like two truths and a lie. And, they'll guess. Guessing is from your mind. Guessing is trying to figure it out. Intuition is
Mhm.
always receiving, and you have to be prepared to receive whatever you get. You have to give up the need to understand what you're receiving at least right away. And you just have to share your impressions and allow those impressions to come and follow that flow. And eventually, I'm pretty good at jumping back between my two brains, and my guides are pretty good at using my stuff, but they're even telling me right now, right? When I am too quick to figure out what they're trying to say, it makes it harder to hear them. So it's sort of like, probably do this too, when, you ask someone a question and then you start talking.
Yeah.
It's like you don't really hear them.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I definitely see where I make that mistake. So and
Yeah.
I'm working on that. That's one
Oh,
where I'm
yeah.
working on.
Yeah, it's just we all do it at first. So it's around allowing yourself not to know for, a little while longer, especially if you're trying to learn new tools. Because to learn a
Mhm.
new tool, you have to allow yourself not to know. So for example, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I noticed that I've had the little prayer and I've done the little prayer a couple times on the show, but I don't always share it with listeners just because I feel like it gets old. But I do have little prayer friends that I say before every session. And I've been doing that. I was given that prayer right out of the gate. And surprisingly, it hasn't changed in the decade and a half that I've been practicing. But midway through my practice, I found that when I was saying the prayer and setting the energy for the group, my hands would go up in the air, kind of like this. You can see they can't, but it would go up in the air. And I would have the sensation I'm setting the energy with my hands, whether someone was in front of me or whether I was seeing them on Zoom or on the phone, my arms would go up in the air. Didn't really think about it. Didn't really plan it. It just started happening. And I was curious about it. I was like, I must be doing some kind of energy work, but I don't know what that is. But here my hands are going up in the air. Right. Then over time, my hands would move and they would start moving. And I would say, like, oh, there's a little congestion around your heart. And my hands would move into that. Or, oh, your neck is really tight. And my hands would work on that. Right. So I've learned that my hands work on people's energy and get people energetically ready for the sessions. And sometimes I do full on sessions where I'm just using my hands to work on people's energies. Right. But the deal is no one showed me how to do this.
Mhm.
No one showed me how to do this. No one taught me how to do this. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm okay with that. But I have clients that call me and say, can you do that thing with your hands? I've got a pain in my back. Can you fix it for me? And I had someone who had an intestinal blockage once, not to be gross. And we were on vacation together. It was a friend slash client. And she was like, can you please work on this? Can you please work on this? And I was like, I'm on vacation. I don't want to work on this. And finally, I was like, okay, you're really struggling. I will. And we had only worked on the phone. We'd been friends for a while, but we'd only worked on the phone up until then. And I put my hands in the air and start working on her intestines. And she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, this is what I do on the phone. Right. So, and it worked. Anyhow, I hope that helps. So it's freeing yourself up, first of all, to not know. Second of all, to listen more deeply and not know. And third, I think the last little bit of that story is sometimes you're going to look silly and it's okay.
Oh, I love that. It had a lot of meat in there for me. I really appreciate your time and doing this and letting me be here.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else? Because we're about to wrap this party up.
I think that you covered a lot of the stuff. I think you were very helpful when it came to, I think that to me, the most important part of all of it. I mean, I already know the not to know part, but that reminder is always really important for me. But I really loved the meditate after I do a session and have a conversation with my guides to see like what I picked up. I'm curious to see where that will go and then bringing in the colors. So those two things were like the super helpful parts
Yay.
that I got from this.
Yay. I think you're on a really good path. I think, again, you asked me because you already have that intuitive knowing that you're not supposed to figure out this path, but you're supposed to find it, discover it, and allow it.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
So I would encourage you to continue doing that. And again, if something strikes your fancy, there's nothing wrong with it. Just don't give your power away to anything, even your guides that are external to you. It's always about remembering within. And there's a part of us that always knows when it's right. And, the more that you allow yourself to listen to that and follow that, the more that will become apparent for you. Okay?
Yeah, I love that so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. Thank you for sharing your story and your light with listeners. I think a lot of people are in the same shoes that you are nowadays and find themselves listening to podcasts like mine. So I think it's going to be of benefit to a lot of folks. So thank you so much for sharing with everybody.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you again. And hopefully we'll stay in touch.
For sure. And listeners, thank you guys also always for tuning in. If you want to experience my work more directly, you know that I do intuitive readings and intuitive development teachings and all sorts of other fun things to people in California, San Diego, and also all over the world via Zoom and phone and all of those good things. So if that speaks to you, you can find out more about that on my website, victoriashawintuitive.com. But either way, please keep tuning in. You all know how much I love that I get to do this, and I get to do this because you guys are all here to listen. And also, it means so much to me to be able to share with all of you. So thank you all for tuning in, and namaste. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you found joy, strength, inspiration, and clarity from today's episode. If you'd like to learn more and connect with an amazing group of like-minded souls, please join us over on Facebook in the Intuitive Connection Community Facebook group, where we explore these topics in deeper detail, have additional live teachings, and host Facebook Lives with our amazing guests. I hope to see you there. And of course, if you want to learn more about me or the work that I do, please check out my webpage, victoriashawintuitive.com. Thank you so much again, and namaste.